And our Chinese who left U.S. and go visit their family in China wasn't allowed to re-enter without the proper documentation. And family reunion was also ceased at the time. And also as a ripple effect, American-born Chinese citizenship was being challenged under the Chinese Exclusion Act. And as a discrimination, Chinese children was also banned by the public school system. And then later, the Exclusion Act was replaced by the Gary Act in 1892, which in another way extend the Exclusion Act for another 10 years, so in total in 2 decades. So therefore, as a result, the Chinatown population is gradually decreased. This couple pictures showing how the press seeing the Chinese. So this is a picture of Missouri Steam in a time. It's actually the press make this happen. They spread the word around. They actually promote the Exclusion Act. So finally, in 1806, San Francisco was struck by earthquake. The whole city was in flames. Chinatown burned to ashes. After the earthquake, most of Chinatown residents went to Oakland to settle as a refugee, but a couple remaining Chinese went back to search their belongings after the earthquake. But they were being forced out by the military and escort them to the Presidio. But because they were Chinese, they were being separated by they were forced to separate with other ethnicity groups. So while the Chinese were away, a lot of the residents who hate Chinese was start robbing the Chinatown. They priked the safe wherever. They took all the belongings of the Chinese. At the time, even Coast Guard joined to join them. At the time, the mayor, San Francisco Mayor E. Smith, saw the damage of Chinatown as an opportunity. He used this as excuse to relocate the Chinatown from its prime location. At the time, financial district is pretty much well developed, so they want to move the Chinatown and take the place. The proposal was to move the Chinatown to the Hunters Point today. But then, with the help of the China consulate, the Chinatown leader, and the preneur in Chinatown, the Chinatown was able to negotiate. The leader was able to negotiate with the mayor at the time to save Chinatown. So the deal is so what happened is the Chinese merchant was threatening the mayor at times, say, if you move Chinatown away from it, we will weather our import goods from Oakland, Seattle, or somewhere else but Chinatown. Therefore, the mayor was agreed to let Chinatown rebuild at the same location. So the person who actually made this happen his name is Lok-Ting Eli. He was the first person who actually took the federal to court to fight against the Exclusion Act, and he was also the first person who successfully defends of his citizenship. And then he was also the person who proposed to rebuild Chinatown the way it is today. So he was the guy who proposed to work with the architecture, Western architecture, to design the Chinatown the way it is now, and how it was, and that he will actually building a foundation of how Chinese looks like today. So this is how Chinatown was being damaged, struck by earthquake. The Chinese refugee was being settled at the Presidio. At the time there was San Francisco, the whole town was in flame, and the Chinatown was burned to ashes. And this is my 50 years of Chinatown, and now I will have Thackeray to take over his part for another 50 years of the Chinatown. I'm done my presentation at this part.
great.
I was trying to share full screen it, but it went to both my screens, and I want to keep one separate, so I'm gonna leave it like this. Good afternoon, class. So I'm covering San Francisco, starting at 1921 to 1971. The first thing I'm gonna cover is the Forbidden City. So San Francisco had a huge nightlife. As far as after around, let's say, the late 1930s in San Francisco, it exploded as far as the nightlife. I guess they're having a lot more fun than we are right now, obviously, at that point. But, you know, it's the situation. So some of the nightlife clubs there was Chinese Sky Room, Kubala Khan, Lion's Den, Dragon's Lair, Club Shanghai, and then the most famous one, the Forbidden City. See this screen. Okay, there we go. Was a Forbidden City. They attracted strollers of white and Chinese alike, with all their Chinese floor shows, and curious dancers, comedians, and singers. And nightlife flourished for about 25 years, providing a glamour, sexiness, and show business that's different than traditional conservative Chinatown. Let me go a couple of pictures. And then I have a short video if you want to play right today. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, but can't hear the sound from the video?
No.
We can hear you talk, but not the sound of the video.
But not the sound. There we go. Okay. Let's see if I full screen they can hear it. Can you hear it now?
No, not really. No.
It's really low.
Hey, that's great. So I think when you click share screen, the audio from your PowerPoint won't able to play. That's the same thing happened to me.
How did you adjust it? How did you fix it? Let me have it on this thing. Okay, well, this is going to be a process. I try. I'm going to keep going. So Shelley and Kramer, 1948. Do anybody have any idea what that is? It was a case, and if I'm not mistaken, it was a case in Missouri, Supreme Court case that went there. Take that as a no. The actual Shelley and Kramer 1948 case was a case against the Supreme Court of Missouri for.
Wait, can I write like I don't see your screen anymore. I see a different screen.
Oh, Lord. All right, hold on. Let me see. Stop sharing for a second. Let me see something.
Trial and error, everybody.
Exactly.
I see the teachers.
I'm going through the mistakes so y'all won't have to go through them. That's how I feel.
Right. Thanks for taking one for the team.
Yeah, somebody had to. So, can y'all see it now?
No.
No.
Professors.
I think I see professor's screen.
Is that the professors?
Hey, Decker, try to
Yeah.
share and unshare. You might able to get away from it. Share and unshare it.
You said share, then share it?
Yeah, share and unshare, and then probably will.
Can y'all see it now?
You have to go to the view options and select on the students individually.
Who one of the curious to get in, they say I want to play decent enough. Simultaneously. I'm looking for technicians now, but like also going back to school, so I'm going to my resume.
I tried to share it again. I don't know if I can see it now. Nope, still nothing.
We have
No, it says-
Shelley versus Kramer, 1948.
Oh, there we go. That's me. All right, yeah, I can see it now. I appreciate it.
All right.
So yeah, so the case arose because an African American was trying to purchase a house in St. Louis, and they had restricted covenant preventing Negroes and Mongolian races from occupying property. So it went to the Supreme Court in Missouri. Then it got blocked. Then it went to the U.S. Supreme Court on an appeal. So after it went to the Supreme Court, that's when it ruled in their favor. So this resulted in the law changing, that case changing the situation across all of the United States. So in result of it, the ruling encouragement of Chinatown to increase the population in the city at the same time, declining the population of the city as a result of white flight. Does anybody know what white flight is? Without Googling it or search on your phone real quick.
Is it when white people leave an area?
That's true. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's pretty much it's called white flight or white exodus. Is when a large migration of white people leave an area because of racial or cultural difference or device, is what they're saying. So that's pretty much what happened, and that's why Chinatown increased at this point after that case was ruling, because now China people from China can actually own property because of that case. Because of the case in Missouri, kind of connect to San Francisco, so the population increased in Chinatown because now they can own property. It was that actual phrase was popular in the 50s and 60s, but really in the United States than anywhere else. And then the neighborhoods were predominantly white. So now since they can buy and own property, it was certain areas as far as Richmond District and Sunset, where China immigrants came and started building a community there. So they started to actually leave. Next slide. Okay, everybody heard of Ellis Island. Hitch, it was on the Hitch movie with Will Smith on it. So in November 12, 1952, Ellis Island, a gateway to America from all immigrants who came through this passageway, was shut down after processing more than 12 million immigrants since opening in 1892. Before that time, the process of immigration has been held to the individual states. Not all immigrants came through the New York Ellis Island. So to connect it back to Chinatown, the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965. So the act was signed by Let me put my notes up. By the 89th U.S. Passed by the 89th U.S. Congress, signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson. The Hart-Celler Act created seven categories, preference systems that give priority to relatives of U.S. citizens and legal permanent residents, as well as to professionals and other individual specialized skills. The act maintained per country and total immigration laws, but included a provision accepting immediate relatives of U.S. and numeral registration. Well, and numeral restrictions. The act also set a number of limitations on immigration from the Western Hemisphere and from time in United States history. Though prominent, the bill had argued that it would not have a major impact on the level of immigration, but it really did. That increased the total amount of immigrations coming to the United States from Asia and Africa. So the act abolished earlier status quo system and national origin, established a new immigration policy based on reuniting immigrants and family, like I said before, attracting slavery to the United States. They go a picture of him actually signing it. Now, how did that connect to Chinatown? It affected Chinatown because, like I said, it increased the population of Chinese and other Asians in America because it opened up them to come to the United States. And that's all I have for my part of the time. And you're next.
You're next. You need to unmute.
Unmute it. So I click the share screen?
Yes.
That's it. Yes.
And click your PowerPoint.
Okay. I'm clicking right now. Okay. Sure. Okay. You get it?
Yep. Go ahead.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So has come the modern history of Chinatown. Okay. Struggling for recognition and rights. So the story of Lovey Nichols, so breaking the silence in Chinatown. In 1971, the San Francisco, California school system was integrated. Lovey Nichols 414 US 567. So in 1974 was a United States Supreme Court case in which the court unilaterally decided that the lack of a supplemental language instruction in public school of the student who limited English proficiency violated the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Here we come. Okay. So here come the slides of Chinatown Community Development Center. The beginning of the center is on April 1st, 1977. 5 grassroots organizations came together and created a nonprofit community development organization, the Chinatown Resource Center. So it started in CRC. The newly formed CRC comprised the organization that advocated for affordable housing, tenants' rights, open space, transportation, and revitalization issues. And those at least five organizations. CBP and RC and CCPH. The third one is PYRIA, the shortest. And the fourth one is proportionally written TRIP. The fifth is Chinatown Corporation for Neighborhood Facilities. By 1978, the Chinese Community Housing Corporation was established as an subsidiary of CRC to provide safe and decent, affordable housing. And CRC and CCXC work closely to integrate housing development activities into an overall neighborhood improvement strategy. Let's go to the next slide. So that's another dark side of Chinatown is gang violence. The percent of the Asian gangs remains significant in the immigrant community. In the summer of 1977, an ongoing rivalry between two street gangs, the Watching and the Joe Boys, resulted in violence and bloodshed. Culminated in a shooting spree at Golden Dragon Restaurant on Mustang Street. So as you can see the essentially covered the picture. So that's the location, the picture of the location. Golden Dragon. Another incident is the Golden Dragon massacre. Was a gang-related shooting attack that took place on September 4, 1977, inside the Golden Dragon Restaurant, located at 822 Washington Street in Chinatown, San Francisco, California. So for detail, you could check online on Wikipedia. Let's go move forward. So about the transportation of Chinatown. San Francisco, okay. So San Francisco cable cars have long service areas of Chinatown. And in the 1980s, Chinatown merchants were opposed to the removal of the Embarcadero Freeway, but those objections were overturned after it was damaged in 1989 Loma-Prieta earthquake. According to the San Francisco Chronicles, activist Rose Park then almost single-handedly pushed the city to build a $1.5 billion central subway project to compensate Chinatown for the demolition of the freeway. Has the cable car picture and the subway so under construction. Okay, let's move forward. We are your family. So it's a parade in Chinatown. In 1994, the ATIC gave Asian Pacific Alliance and Asian Pacifica Sisters joined the parade under the flag "We Are Your Family." Asian Pacific Sisters marching in the 1994 San Francisco Chinese New Year Parade. The first time Asian gay and lesbian groups participated in the event. The Chinese people are a sympathetic group. They sympathize with ethnic minorities, weak and small groups. The annual New Year Parade in Chinatown is an event that all the Chinese is proud of. So welcome to join the parade for every Chinese New Year. The next slide comes the Chinese History Society of America. Oh, am I in the wrong? Yeah, family. Oh, yes. So Chinese Historical Society of Americans. So is the oldest and largest achieved and history Chinese American experience in the United States. It is based on the Chinatown neighborhood of San Francisco, California. In November 2001, the CHSA relocated and opened the Chinese Historical Society of American Museum and Learning Center in a Chinatown YWCA building. The National Trust for Historical Preservation Award, the CHSA, is a National Preservation Honor Award in 2004 for its work restoring and retrofitting the year 1932 building, nicknamed the Lantern on the Hill. In 2005, CHSA received another award from the California Heritage Council for its restoration of the YWCA building. So here comes the picture is the outside of the building. So another picture is the inside of the museum. Okay, we can go to the Chinese media and politics. In the citywide board of supervisors election, the Chinatown forms part of District 3 in 2014, accounted for 44% of both registered voters and Boris case. The two main newspapers lead among residents are Xingdao Daily and Wu Journal. During news media reports, the Chinese began to work in government departments such as lawyers, California registrators, the Secretary of State of California, the mayor, etc., to contribute to community and government works. So I had two ladies on my research. She was selected as California Secretary of State in 1947, became the first Chinese American person to hold a state constitutional office in the United States. The second one is Lola J. Fu. She's labor activity and atomic. Let's move to the analysis. Okay, so this slide is pretty memorable for the Chinese. In the memory of Mr. Edmund Lee, selecting his first Chinese American mayor was a milestone for a city that had a long history of discrimination against Chinese people. And he loved Chinatown, and he was the mayor who got Chinatown CDC to repair and take over the Pingyuan for the community. Mr. Lee, the beginning of his career was for the residents of Chinatown public housing to strive to make Chinatown a better and healthier place. Maybe just going for the next place.
Yeah.
Kind of long. So recently, just my most news is, so when Chinatown facing COVID-19, how San Francisco Chinatown got ahead of the coronavirus, despite being a densely population neighborhood full of vulnerable people. Chinatown was well prepared. The main reason is the California, or maybe the Chinese musician and physician, we had a good connection with the Chinese physician. So at the beginning on January 24, 2020, so Dr. Jane Jen, that she excluded San Francisco Chinese Hospital. So shown a long photograph as she strolled through her holiday greeting to WeChat and medical school careers in San Francisco, was about to join more than 100 other healthcare care providers being rushed to Wuhan to help manage coronavirus outbreak. And seems like we get more information earlier than other states in the United States. We get more information. That's not like, President Trump said, we don't have any information from China, blah, blah, blah. But it seems like we have, California is the state, so the earlier one like get good prepared for this crisis. I'm going to the conclusion. Summing up the Chinatown project, the Chinese has experienced loss of prohibiting voting, possession of properties, and prohibiting generation of Chinese from fully participating in American life, where Chinese exclusion and discrimination had affected societies. The system of Chinese. Chinatown today is the contribution of all pioneers. Therefore, for human rights, they did not reaching. Looking at modern Chinese Americans, while retaining the traditional Chinese culture, they are consistently changing and advancing. There are many Chinese people involved in politics, and San Francisco has a Chinese mayor, Ed Meng. He was elected mayor of San Francisco in 2011 and became the first Asian to sit in a position in the history of the city. He has many traditional Chinese virtues, trusts his subordinates, respects his opinions, and even decisions his praise are endings. The former music commented on Ali of Trustment, excellence, but humble. Today, the Chinese are respected by an minority and mainstream society. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right,
I'm
that's
sorry.
we did it.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
How can
you
I?
did it.
How can I end my? Oh, stop share.
Yeah. Thank
Tell
you.
me. What should I do? How can I close my file?
Well, you go to the top. Just go to the
Go
top.
to the top.
And it says stop sharing. If you keep going up.
Oh, stop sharing. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much for that initial presentation. I wanted to thank you for that, and also for going first and all. I mean, it's a when we have transitioned from the classroom to the Zoom, it is very, very difficult. And so I really appreciate the effort that went into the presentation. And I would like to, just out of respect to the group, I'd like to know if there are any questions that anyone has of the group members about any part of the presentation. As I was watching, let me just say that as I was watching the presentation, I would like to suggest that I am able to share these PowerPoints with the entire class, particularly because the final quiz will, at least in part, rely on this information in the presentations. If the class as a whole would agree, I'd like to be able to send out these presentations to the entire class so they get the full benefit of the work that has been done. But you'd have to do that because that's your intellectual property, and I want to make sure that you are comfortable with that. So I just would like to not ask that question now, but I would like to plant that seed and get you to think about the possibility of having all of the presentations circulate throughout the class. Okay. Okay, so I think what would be good right now, to be quite honest, is if we could take just 2 or 3 minute break, just a stretch break, and then come back and then move on to the Disneyland presentation. Okay, so let's be back. My clock says 7:32. Let's be back by 7:35. How does that sound? So 7:35, we all resume back here in 3 minutes. Just get yourself a stretch break, and that'll be great. Okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, I think that takes us through the 3 minutes. If we could get started, please, with the Disneyland group, if you could introduce yourselves, and if there's anything I can do to help, I will. Look at you. Wow. Okay.
Hello,
Yep,
can you guys hear me?
absolutely.
All right. So, this is our presentation. My name is Carl. In our group, we have Ariana, DJ, Joanna, and Paula. Yeah. So, this word, art of imagineering, it's a trademark. It's a trademark word by Disney themselves. So, can I go to the next slide? So when we, so Disney, Walt Disney, he was born in Chicago in 5th of December, uh, with other five siblings. He grew up with other five siblings, so they have so he have total of a big family. You could say that. Uh, so as we know, Walt Disney dropped out of high school. So like that is pretty rare back in the days because no one dropped out of high school back then because people would say that oh, you didn't study that, you didn't study this, you're just a dropout, you won't go anywhere in life. But Walt Disney proved others wrong that uh, he won't be like just a typical dropout. So when he was 24 years old, he married Lillian, his wife, and they had two daughters, Deanne and Sharon. So he committed his life to make uh, cartoons because that what makes him happy. And so after 1928, he focused on storyline production and development, and his career began as a cartoonist with small companies before he established his own studio, the Disney Brothers, in 1925. Can you go to the next slide? So before his success, like I said earlier, his career began as a cartoonist for a small company before actually making Disney in 1925. So he started to get popular at 1928 when he drew Mickey Mouse, like the the icon for Disney, and in years to come, he also drew others like the Snow White, Seven Dwarfs, uh, Fantasia, Bambi, Peter Pan, etc. And these characters make Disney successful, and 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 yeah, and without them, we won't see a world like full of entertainment. Because like imagine if Disney wasn't made, I don't know like what will be what will be our childhood is, because like every kid is like at least they have watched a Disney show and they're happy to watch a Disney show because they make them happy. So we should really thank Walt Disney because of that. And next slide. So Disney really grew in the 1940s because live action productions were launched. So because of live action production, this made Disney bloom even more and made themselves a name around the world. So in 1953, before establishing Disneyland, Disney was inspired with the idea when his daughters were riding a carousel and wanted to create a place for friends and family. So just just a small scenario like that uh, made him uh, inspired to to create a place for friends and family that would entertain them. So it is key to know that amusement parks were dying in that age. So knowing the risk, this Walter still took on the challenge and made a amusement park. So the idea of Disneyland surfaced again when Mickey Mouse Park failed. He realized Riverside lot wasn't enough space for photos with life-size characters or small train rides for kids. And yeah, so as we could see, like there's tons of Disneylands, Disney World all over the world. Like we have a Disney World here in Florida, Disneyland here. We have in Japan, Hong Kong, everywhere else. And right now, we could Also, have Disney Plus. Like Disney is buying everything right now, so like their successes have been huge lately. Next slide. So the economy and Disney. So people who work at Disney's, we might say like they're the fortunate people in the world because they could go to Disneyland for free, but like it might be stressful because they're be handling a lot of people and they're just standing there and working, but not really having fun. Like that's what Disneyland about. But so these employers in 2018, CNN said that they average at least $11 an hour in Disney, which is kind of low. This because despite like all the hard work is still getting paid like that. So Bernie Sanders helped influence the 20% raise from $13.25 to $15 in early June, so that in June 2020 it will be $15.45. So and and they also had new attractions, which is good business for everyone. The Cars Land and Galaxy Edge will bring more people, which means will bring more money and make up for the lost money in the making. And Disney invested an estimated 2 billion developing Star Wars, Galaxy Edge, and Disney Hollywood Studios, boosting employment to 31,000 workers. So, so Disney Productions always find a way to be fair to their employers, and also to find a way to make a high price in the uh, economic whatever. So that's my presentation, and now I'll hand over to DJ, and he will present his slides.
Hey, just checking if everyone can hear me. Okay, so Disneyland is, of course, like one of the greatest theme parks that is known in California, and it runs well like year round and attracts millions of people. But would you believe me if the happiest place on earth started out in a not so happy way? So Disneyland's opening day took place on July 17th, 1955, and was nothing that they had planned for. That day, they had planned for roughly 11,000 people who had been invited and would have been accounted for. This, however, was not the case and ended up becoming what the workers from that day called Black Sunday. It seemed that anything you could think of to go wrong did, from ride malfunction in areas still under construction to water shortages and dinner supplies running out. This did spring up from many factors. On the next slide, we'll have a few listed, from Walt himself being distracted by opening day and the media to the craze for people wanting to get into the theme park. People went to lengths of selling counterfeit tickets, and from one alleged story, setting up a ladder outside and charging $5 for people to climb and get over to the other side. The park ended up seeing roughly 28,000 people, going 17,000 over who they invited and planned for. Despite all of that, they did regather themselves and open up to the public the next day, but it just shows how Disneyland did not have the greatest start out day. But aside from the failure of their opening day, we're going to jump into ride history. Oh, I'm sorry about that. So we can see that they never get complacent with their rides. They're consistently improving their rides and creating better versions to stay with the times and make things more exciting for their guests. A few examples of these rides that have been closed and upgraded would be like the 1959 Submarine Voyage, which closed in 1998. About 9 years, it reopened in 2007, refurbished and remodeled to what's now the Finding Nemo Submarine Voyage. Another ride, a little more recent, stems from Disney's acquiring Marvel and changing the Hollywood Tower of Terror on January 3rd, 2017, after 13 years of operation and creating Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. These rides usually have the same function, but changes their design and visuals to give the feeling of a new and improved ride. There are also the rides that did not perform up to expectations. They have either been reconstructed or closed for good. A prime example of this type of ride would be the Flying Saucers ride, that they tried to capture a more futuristic feeling to it. Unfortunately, the ride could not accommodate the amount of people they had hoped for and was also too expensive to maintain, leading to its permanent closure in 1966. Even the 1967 People Mover closed in 1995 to later become Rocket Roads in 1998, but ultimately closed in 2000 due to numerous technical problems. And then coming forward, we have a couple pictures to give you guys visuals. So on the left side, we have the submarine voyage and has the big clam and the sea serpent. In the middle is the reconstruction where they emptied out the whole lagoon area, painted all the submarines yellow and blue, and then they added in some new designs to give you that Finding Nemo feel. You see the little girl over there, the fishy girl, likes to shake them. And on the top, they added screens. So as you're going through the ride, you follow the screens, you see the characters that you love, and you're going through a new adventure with them. On the next ride that we're going to show you, we have the Flying Saucers ride that we talked about. So this one was a ride that kind of worked with air pressure on a grid of circular valves beneath the saucers that could then shift and move depending on where you position your weight. If the weight stayed in the center, the saucers would hop up and down to give the illusion it was floating. Though the ride sounds fun and advanced for its time, it could only hold one ride per saucer, so it wasn't able to accommodate many and soon just closed for good. The one on the right, we have the Guardians vs. the Tower of Terror, so you can see how it has the whole Hollywood Tower of Terror on the right, gives you that old abandoned feeling, something went wrong there, but that was later remodeled and changed to Guardians of the Galaxy to make way and start for their Marvel area of the park. And inside, you'll see not just the outside decorations, but the inside decorations. When you go in there, it gives you that feel that you're in the Guardians of the Galaxy universe. And during the ride, it still has the same function of going up and down and dropping, but with the same technology as Finding Nemo added in virtual screens to follow the story of escaping the prison with the Guardians of the Galaxy crew. And on the third one, we have pictures of the People Mover and pictures from Rocket Rods. So the People Mover was more of a slow ride that had audio highlights parts of the park while riding over the ground level. This was thought to be too slow and more of a footrest for people and was later changed to Rocket Rods. Rocket Rods gave more of a fast-paced race above the ground in which people would board and go through a series of red, yellow, and green lights, speeding up before slowing down at the turn. Sadly, we stated earlier the ride experienced many technical problems before closing in 2000 of September and has yet to ever be worked on or constructed. So aside from the rides, let's jump into the impact Disney has in Southern California. Disneyland's original destination site was supposed to be Burbank, but after being rejected, they chose Anaheim due to how affordable the land was, as well as the climate. Before Disneyland arrived in Anaheim, it was mostly filled with orange growers, but the $17 million theme park began to work its magic. Disneyland has become somewhat of an economic engine in SoCal for about 60 years, bringing in about $3 billion each year with millions going to surrounding businesses. Disneyland brings in the visitors, which helps boost the hotel occupancy and accounts for 1/3 of all Anaheim Transit occupancy tax revenue. Oh, that's a tongue twister. Thanks to the popularity of Disneyland and the 14 million people it brings in yearly, creates hotels to flourish and brings in about 57,000 jobs for the resort, or 73% of the 78,000 workers supported directly or indirectly by Disneyland. These numbers generally sum up about 3.4% of all jobs in Orange County. Of course, Disneyland doesn't just help the hotels, but local restaurants and grocery stores. With so many people visiting, I mean, they have to eat and get their groceries somewhere. So everything around nearby is flourishing from Disneyland. Disneyland created a new face in California aside from San Francisco and Hollywood. It brought a different type of fun to California that many people come to visit and enjoy. It's like really just known worldwide. A lot of people know Disneyland in California. So with all that being said, I guess it's not wrong to say that Disneyland has really helped out Orange County flourish from when they first opened.
Okay, so now we're going to jump in and we're going to start talking about how Disney grew as a company and how it came to affect Disneyland Park. I think it's only fair that I put on my mini ears for this, as I am an avid Disney fan. So let's get this started. Okay, so Pixar and Disney actually made Incredibles and Toy Story together about 2006 and 2007-ish. Those two movies came out. They're actually not Disney movies. They're Pixar and Disney. This was before Disney had bought out Pixar. But Disney buying out Pixar was actually great for Disney because at this time, Disney was struggling a lot with creating animated movies. Around this time, they came out with movies such as like Pocahontas. So you can really compare the visual effects of Pocahontas and Incredibles and see what kind of difference it makes to have Pixar on the team. And what this means for Disneyland Park was Disneyland California Adventure was kind of a struggling part of Disneyland. And when they added Pixar Pier to replace one of the areas that they had called Paradise Pier, it actually drove in a lot more traffic because they had Pixar themed rides and attractions that seriously brought in more money to that area of the park that was failing. Then secondly, we have Marvel. And of course, as we all know, Marvel has a very strong fan base. But when Disney bought it out, they were credited for giving Marvel the extra boost that they needed. So I think we can all fairly say that the Marvel movies have been a lot more successful these past years than they were before. So they got access to all the Marvel characters, to mostly all the Marvel characters. Some were still a part of different companies such as Sony, but Disney worked with what they had and they created great movies. And how that affects Disneyland is that Disneyland is supposed to be opening in June 2020, Avengers Campus. I'm not too sure about if the date is going to be changed or not because of the whole quarantine thing. But they are supposed to be opening Avengers Campus, which would be great foot traffic because that would be placed in Disney's California Adventure. And again, that park doesn't make as much foot traffic as original Disneyland does. So if they have Avengers Campus there, they're going to be able to get more foot traffic in, making more profits for that area of the park. And then lastly, we have Lucasfilms. Lucasfilms is the area, is the film industry that created Star Wars. And as we all know, Star Wars is a cult classic. Star Wars has a very strong fan base. It's one of the one of the highest grossing franchises ever created. And what Star Wars, once Disney got the rights to Star Wars and all the characters in Star Wars, they created the newer movies that have just recently came out, and that gave them the inspiration to create Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland Park, the original Disney park. And for about the first month and a half of Galaxy's Edge opening, they were only taking reservations because foot traffic was going to be too heavy for the workers to actually maintain. So they only took reservations for about the first month and a half of Galaxy's Edge opening. And then I believe right before quarantine had happened in California, they opened up Rise of the Resistance, which is a Star Wars themed ride. And even then, they were only taking reservations for that particular ride because, again, foot traffic was just going to be too heavy to accommodate all the guests. So all in all the Pixar fans, the Marvel fans, and Lucasfilm, Star Wars fans are now falling under the Disney umbrella. And if they do want to go visit and do want to see their favorite fandoms in person, they visit Disneyland. So they go and spend their money at Disneyland. They'll spend on merchandise, food, tickets, anything, and all that is going to go towards the park making profit. And then later on, that profit flowing into Orange County. And then can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So this is just a photo of some prices that Disney paid for some of their different acquisitions. I want you guys to focus on Pixar, Marvel, and Lucasfilms. So all in all, combined, it's about $18 billion that Disney had paid as a company to own those different aspects of them. So what I want you guys to kind of understand is that, like DJ said, Disneyland annually makes about $3 billion a year. So in order to pay that $18 billion off, it would take Disneyland only 6 years to make that money to pay off the prices of Pixar, Marvel, and Lucasfilms. And that's only Disneyland. Disneyland under its umbrella has Disneyland and California Adventure. Those two parks alone make about $18 billion in 6 years, which is crazy to think about because they're theme parks, but they're making enough money to buy one of the most famous franchises ever. So you can really see exactly how big Disneyland is and how much money they really make. Can we go to the next slide? And now we're going to talk about my favorite part of the presentation is Disney failures. We're going to start off with America Sings. As we all know, Disneyland is the happiest place on earth, but like DJ said again, they have their flaws. So with America Sings, it opened in 1974 through 1988. It was really weird because if anyone has ever been to Disneyland, they know what Tomorrowland is. They know that Tomorrowland is themed to be an area of the park for the future. And for some reason, Disney thought it was a good idea to place a patriotic sing-along ride right dab in the middle of it. And it was really weird. It was just a weird thing to see for the guests that were coming into Disneyland at that time. One of the characters had a really offensive Mexican accent. So a lot of the guests complained about it. They didn't like it at all. So they went ahead and scrapped it, and then they put in a Southern accent to replace the offensive Mexican accent. That was an oopsie on Disney's part. And then on some more heavy-hearted news that happened with America Sings, there was an 18-year-old cast member that had actually passed away on her shift of America Sings. While the ride was closing, she was actually squished between. So the ride sat on like a moving carousel, and she was next to the carousel, and she was actually, because of a design flaw, crushed in between the ride. And what really like stuck with the guests that were going to visit America Sings was that it reopened 2 days after her death. They cleaned it up and then they reopened it as if nothing happened. So the foot traffic there just slowly started to diminish, and then rumors started to come out about it being haunted, and eventually families just didn't think that they wanted to take their kids there. Along with that, it was again placed in a really weird part of the park. So they ended up just getting rid of the ride because nobody was really going in it at all at this point. So bye-bye America Sings. And then the next one's going to be Sunshine Plaza. This one, I think most of us will remember if we went to if you guys have gone to Disneyland within the last, not couple of years, maybe within that time frame, within 2001 to 2012. Sunshine Plaza was the main entrance to Disney's California Adventure. It was supposed to resemble a postcard. A lot of guests thought it was really tacky and ugly, to say the least. I guess depending on your taste, it could go either or, but a lot of the complaints were that it was not Disney themed and it just didn't go well with Disney's theme at all. And the CEO of Disney at the time actually was in an interview, and they asked him about it, and he said, to quote, "Anytime you do something mediocre with your brand, it's a withdrawal. California Adventure was a withdrawal. At this time, nobody was happy with Disneyland California Adventure, not even the CEO. It was kind of just, a lot of people thought of it as an idea that just threw together. And then on top of that, the ugly entrance just didn't really appeal to Disney guests at all. They would have rather have gone to visit Disney and walked through the gates and saw the familiar Mickey Mouse on the little garden, right, as you scan your ticket, versus walking in and seeing something that resembled more like Great America than it did Disney. So they scrapped the idea. They got rid of all of it, and it's now Buena Vista Street, and now the entrance is a lot more appealing to a Disney guest than this postcard. But if you guys still want to see the California letters and you are nostalgic, it's actually donated to a museum up in Sacramento. So if you ever went there and were feeling nostalgic, you can go up to Sac and see the letters there. And then my favorite disaster of Disney is Superstar Limo. Superstar Limo is the shortest ride lived throughout Disney history. It only was up for a year. It was up from the opening of California Adventures until a year later, and they threw it away. So this ride, when it came out, Imagineers, who are the people that engineer rides and create the rides for Disneyland parks and just Disney parks in general, they thought when they presented to the CEO of Disney the idea for this ride, which is a ride that basically puts you in the seat of a limo and makes you as if you were a movie star going through Hollywood, and you had to go get to this big audition. So the Imagineers threw this idea together. They didn't think it was going to get a green light, but the CEO of Disney green lighted it, and he really liked the idea, despite all the worries of the Imagineers. And then another really weird thing that happened, unfortunately, was that the entrance of Superstar Limo referenced Angel's Flight, which is the smallest railroad in the world, and it's located in Los Angeles. It referenced it right at the beginning. You can kind of see it here. I'm not going to try and put it out because it's a really small image, but you can kind of see it at the entrance there. It was called Angel's Flight. It was the smallest railroad. And actually, a week prior to Superstar Limo opening, someone had died on Angel's Flight, and Angel's Flight was closed down for a very long time. So it was kind of a weird reference for guests to see going in to see that ride and seeing like, oh, okay, somebody just died on that one, but I guess it's on top of this ride. So it was just something really weird to see. And on top of that really weird vibe that the guests got as soon as they walked in and saw the letters was that they actually just sat down on the ride. And as you can see on the photo right there is that it was tacky and 2D cheap, quote unquote, ugly decorations is what I see from some reviews. People were not a fan of this ride at all. It was weird, short-lived, and that's it for Superstar Limo. Short-lived. So that wraps up our presentation. Does anybody have any questions about anything that we presented today?
Nope. Great job, y'all. Nope.
Thank you very much for a really enthusiastic presentation with a lot of nuance and history. Very much appreciated that. Thank you again for that. So that's really great. So if we could take about 3 minutes again, just to kind of stretch a little bit. We're going to go into the last presentation, and then we have a couple of paper topics that we'll take on. And we should be out by 9 o'clock. I mean, and we have to be, because that's my promise to you. But so if we could take 3 minutes, and so if we can come back, try 2 minutes, really. Just get up and stretch and run around a little bit, and then come back to your computer in 2 minutes. See you in 2 minutes. Marianne?
Yes.
I sent you a message earlier, and I was just wondering if you and Nestor could have a chat with me after we finish this evening. And it regards the final quiz.
Sure, no problem. And then my paper tonight, I did end up doing a PowerPoint.
Excellent.
So hopefully I'll be able to play it.
Oh, I'm sure it'll be fine. What do you have, about 10 minutes worth or so?
Yeah, it's just about 10 minutes, yes.
Excellent. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Yes, and I'll hang on after class. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Okay, thank you, Nestor. Thanks. Okay, if we can get ready, if we can move on the third presentation for tonight, which is the Mission District. So would the Mission District come forward with your PowerPoint?
Yeah, that's going to be me. How would I share that through like my computer?
Okay, so let me try to do this. So if you go to your...
Is it in the middle, the share screen?
It is. It's that one. You hit that one, and then you will share your screen with us. Is it just you tonight?
No, it's me and 3 other people. I'm gonna like introduce them.
Okay. So
I think it's
no. There you go. Okay. Whoops.
Wait. Can you guys see?
We see a Zoom screen. It says join a meeting, host a meeting. So it's not that. So what you'll want to do is get on your, there you go. That's it. You do whatever you did. There it is. Bingo.
Give me 1 sec. Let me just move. You guys can see, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So for this presentation, it's going to be the history of the Mission District, the mission culture. And in this presentation, it's going to be me, Lisandro, James, and Manny.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so this is going to be a quick intro. I'm not exactly sure if it's going to play, but I'll try.
What if you could get glowing skin overnight?
Wow, it works.
I went foundation.
Each Sunday, the bells of the Mission Dolores Basilica call local parishioners to prayer. The sounds of midday Mass are a legacy of Spanish missionaries who built a sturdy house of worship in 1776 that still stands today and is the foundation for a neighborhood.
This is just 2 minutes.
Over the years, Irish, German, and Italian immigrants have all called the mission home. But the latest wave is mostly Hispanic, coming from Mexico and from Central and South America. And their contributions to the neighborhood's cultural identity are evident. On the walls, in the food, and in the music.
We share our griefs, we share our joys.
Whether to share sorrow or celebrate life, the music of the mission has had a profound effect.
It's vivid, it's alive, it's jumping.
So are the colors of the district. Drawing on the area's cultural traditions, public art here became an expression of heritage and protest.
One is about Los Desaparecidos.
If Mission Dolores was the foundation of the district, this church is now the cornerstone. Here, families gather from Mexico, El Salvador. The congregation is a veritable organization of Latin American states.
And they bring with them the best of their country, particularly their interest in their families, their interests and their traditions. And what I see going on here in a very, very positive way is an integration of the best of Latin American culture now with American culture.
In the Mission District, immigrants have made this corner of San Francisco uniquely their own.
So that was
when allergies fill your nose with dread, try the pillowy softness.
It was so fast. Wait, give me 1 second. Okay. So that was the quick intro. So before,
excuse me, I would have said, would those of you who are not speaking, please mute your Zooms? That would be great, because we're hearing a lot of background noise. Thanks.
Okay, I think it's better now. All right. So before the Spanish arrived, the Mission District was actually inhabited by the Aloha people, or Alohone people. We talked about it in class, who made up most of the population in San Francisco at the time. And the Ulima Indians lived in the Mission area for over 2,000 years, but it wasn't until the late 18th century when the Spanish arrived. And upon their arrival, they found these people living in the 2 villages on Mission Creek, and it was there where a Spanish priest named Father Francisco Palo founded the Mission San Francisco de Aces, which is one of the famous buildings in the Mission area, in 1776. And in 1783, the Mission was moved from the shore of Laguna Dolores to its current location where it is now. And when the Spanish arrived, it did affect the Ulema people that were already there, because they ended up like dying and like from diseases and just from like labor from the Spanish. But yeah, so the next slide is, this is the end of the Ulema culture. So basically in the 1700s, the Spanish forced labor, farming, and disease upon these people, which is what mostly killed off the population, and it destroyed their way of life. So their population dropped from 400 people to like 50 people between 1833 to 1841. So by the 1847, there were recorded only 34 like members of the tribe left, who were in the San Francisco Peninsula area. And in 1791, it was reported by like people that worked in like the Catholic churches and stuff like that, that they used to use the people for slave labor, and they would basically mistreat them pretty bad, which is basically what killed them. And so for the next one, it's going to be after it's the Southern expansion. And in 1834, after the Mission was secularized, much of the surrounding land was turned into ranches and farms. So the land around the Mission area became like more focal points of attractions, because now there was like bullfighting, like bear fighting. So basically, it was like after like around the gold rush era, when everything was just starting to boom, and there was a lot of rich people coming into San Francisco, and it was just like the city was expanding basically. And so this is Manny's.
Yeah.
How do I share this? Did he just talk?
Yeah, I just talk right now.
Okay.
Okay, so there's basically the gold rush. Also, it happened in California, and it actually affected the Mission District. It just basically we already did a lot of videos and watched it on the gold rush and everything, how the population rose, prices of everything, the cost of living went up in California. The conflicts with the Native Americans where they were getting hunted and scalped and everything and getting payment for doing that. It was just a rushing into the area and, in San Francisco itself. I want to go on the next slide on that one too, right there. And then, I found it interesting too that Levi Strauss and stuff too. They made Levi Strauss made a killing basically by having the blue denim jeans that the miners would use. It was like that basically where it started up his business. And the original factory, which ran for almost 100 years, still stands on 250 Valencia, but now it's a private Quaker school. I thought that was crazy. That's something that's over 100 years. It's still part of the Mission District history. So, next slide. And just like what she was kind of saying too, like in the center, the Mission Church became the focal point for the new residents in town. They held a multitude of attractions here, ranging from bullfighting to baseball. Same thing she was saying. And the gold rush was responsible for the increase of population during the time. And basically, California had its first baseball stadium, Recreation Grounds. It was opened in 1868, and it still remains as Garfield Square today. So that's why I thought it was important that I wanted to bring that up. All right. Next slide. From leaving the 19th century to the 20th century, during the California's early statehood, basically there was a lot of Irish and German immigrants in the area. It wasn't just it wasn't Latino at all at that moment. I thought that was interesting. In my head, always thought it was them. So that was something that I learned actually too. The Mission District was one of the least populated areas that basically was just, for the middle class, lower class families that were living there and everything too. Like I'm telling you, I always thought it was most populated. So that was interesting for me too. So next slide, please. The 1906 earthquake, it struck. It was huge. It was one of California's biggest earthquakes to this date that actually occurred. It was devastating. That actually broke out in fires, and it destroyed over 80% of the city. And more than 3,000 people died. So basically, that was very important in San Francisco's history because that's one of the worst disasters besides COVID basically right now that's actually occurring about 100 years ago, and it stands strong. That 7.9 that happened, and fires made it completely worse and destroyed a lot of San Francisco. Next slide, please. The aftermath from 1906 earthquake, development and settlement intensified after the earthquake, as many displaced residents moved into the area, making Mission Street a major commercial thoroughfare. So basically, even though the earthquake happened, a lot of people started investing into the street, and then you can start seeing it was even started building what it is kind of going on today, and it made it a lot more popular even from an earthquake, and kind of go from there. Next slide, please. During the 1940s and to the 1960s, a large number of Mexican immigrants moved into the area, displaced from an earlier Mexican barrio located on Recon Hill, in order to create the western landing of the Bay Bridge, initiating white fight, giving the mission a heavily Chicano Latino character for which it continues to be known today. Yeah, they just basically rolled in, and you know, you know, you can see the culture that is standing on today, from the Mexican culture that they brought from Mexico and everything. So yeah, basically that's my part. I'm gonna send it over to James, I think. Next slide.
This is another video about gentrification. Let me just see if this one will play. Can you guys hear it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not exactly sure if it's the whole thing. I think it's only
Like the whole mission, you know, we're fighting against gentrification, people that are just taking over San Francisco, people who are just coming over here because they're finding employment like tech and etc. You know, people are just over here struggling. They excel to meet those needs. So, you know, something that plays a role in San Francisco is that there's a lot of people being kicked out. You know, like the black and brown people are being hidden, are going to like districts like Pittsburgh, Oakland, San Jose area, like farther away from the city. You know, the people that are natives, growing up, born and raised here 20, 30 years and not being kicked out because all of a sudden there's a tech boom and, you know, everybody can't afford to live here because all these houses are just so much, you know, they can't even afford it. So like the Mission District, you know, usually that's the place for all the Latino crowds, you know, everybody from South America, Central America, you know, usually they find a good community there. They find like, feels like home really. But now, like all of a sudden, like these 2 to 3 years that's been going on, it's just really been gentrified and really been people that are being kicked out, like what I said, and it's just really sad because it doesn't even feel like the Mission District no more.
All the business that used to occupy is gone. People that come here because of their own business have the right to stay in business, don't have the right to be run off. I think everybody has the right to make a living. But some people doesn't think so. They come here try to make a living their whole life. I mean, better life. I mean, they love country, they don't have a good job, and it's hard for them.
Definitely not the same. Like, I walk down the Mission, and I mean, it's not all necessarily white people, but it's more like people who have high-paying jobs, people who like, you know, like in tech, you know, they're just like there. It used to be all Latino-speaking communities. I walk down the Mission now, it's people talking English. 10 years ago, all you hear was Spanish. And it's just crazy. We're just losing culture. And shops are closing down. Like, shout out to La Victoria. I've been going there for hell long, and they shut down 2 weeks ago. The best bread in the city. But it's just a shame that all these businesses are closing down and like, all that old roots of the Mission is just dying. But we're trying to keep it alive, promoting not promoting gentrification, but letting people know it's there and it's keeping people out.
Culture, I feel, has changed a lot, especially here on Valencia or just Mission Street in general, just because you don't see old people like being themselves or just in general like celebrations they used to do, or if there's any like Dia de los Muertos, I feel like Caucasians take that as it's a second Halloween, and it's just not the same.
I'm gonna pause it right there because that was a good pause. Okay. But the guy that was talking before hit a lot of important points because give me one sec. But the guy hit a lot of important points when he talked about how now it's so many people, like from high-tech businesses, that are coming in and moving into the Mission area, which is an area that's been so home-based for a long time, and it's kicking a lot of families out, and they're either moving away far or they're going to the street, so it's really hard for them. All right, that's Jane.
Hello, can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You're fine.
Cool. So in the 1960s and 1970s, during this time period, the Chicano Latino population along the western side declined as more middle-class young people moved in. Many of these people were gay and lesbian, which helped establish Valencia Street to become one of the greatest concentration of lesbian neighborhoods in all of the United States. Eventually, this building became where the women's building was built as a testimony to gender equality, self-determination, and social justice. And that's a picture of the women's building right there. Next slide, please. So the women's building mural. It was painted by 7 women artists, including Juana Alicia, Miranda Burnham, Edith Boone, Susan Kelks Cervantes, Mira Desai, Yvonne Littleton, and Irene Perez, along with the helpers and volunteers in 1994. The mural, titled Maestra Piece, covers both the outside of the women's building as well as the interior entrance hall and stairway. It features images of feminine icons from history and fiction and the names of more than 600 women written all in calligraphy. According to the San Francisco Women's Center, this spectacular mural is a culmination of a multicultural, multi-generational collaboration to 7 women artists and a colorful work of art that sings to our community. Next slide, please. So the 24th Mission murals. Presida I's mural, that mural right there on your right. The Presida I Muralist Association was founded by 1977 by Susan Louise Cervantes, who had come to the Bay Area several years before and started a family. Susan Cervantes herself had been inspired by Las Mujeres Muralistas, the first all-women group of collaborative muralists, from which she applies her strategy of collaborative, accessible community art. The organization evolved from a community mural workshop in which the participant designed and painted the portable murals, the Masks of God or the Souls of a Man, for the Bernal Heights Library. The group project signed the piece as Presida I's Muralist became the project was a collaborative effort. The name of the organization came from the fact that most of the muralists were from Presida Valley, which gets its name from Presida Creek. Presida is a diminutive form of the Spanish word presa, which means dam. The word Presida means little dam. The eyes in the name are what we perceive the visual world with our own eyes. Next slide, please. So population. In the 1980s and 1990s, the neighborhood received a higher influx of immigrants and refugees from Central America, South America, the Middle East, and even the Philippines, and former Yugoslavia fleeing civil wars and political instability at the time. These immigrants brought up in many Central American banks and companies which would set up branches, offices, and regional headquarters on Mission Street. So nowadays, Mission Street is more of like you can kind of see all these different types of immigrants and their cultures being brought into the Mission District. This is a picture of, I think it's 24th and Mission. Further down the block, towards 30th, there's a bunch of banks along the route, and I found out that a bunch of these banks, they're branches of bigger banks from different countries, basically. And so I think that's pretty cool. Next slide, please. The Carnival mural. So if you follow 24th Street up, you'll arrive at South Van Ness Avenue to a mural that's enriched the lives of longtime locals for an entire generation. The paintings of the Carnival mural took place in 1983 in honor of the very first San Francisco Carnival Festival in 1979. After 300 colorfully dressed drummers and dancers wound their way down Van Ness Avenue, around Presidio Park in the Mission District, it became an honored parade and event. That first carnival led it to being one of the biggest and most diverse carnival parades in the country. Muralist Daniel Galvez joined local artists Dan Fontes, Keith Sklar, Jamie Morgan, Eduardo Pineda, and Gene Shield in 1983 to recreate the unforgettable energy and capture the diverse spirit of the first event. Referred to as the Golden Dreams of the Mission, the 24-foot high, 75-foot wide mural is located just above the House of Breaks. Next slide, please. And then we have Balmy Alley, staying on the 24th Street through 25th, and between various Street and Harrison Street locations is Balmy Alley. Painted walls and murals started popping up along Balmy Alley in the mid-'80s, when civil rights and other political turmoil plagued the streets all over America. This alley's political art theme carried on through the decades, and now mural themes cover issues like gentrification, human rights, and Hurricane Katrina. Much of Balmy Alley art takes on heavy Southern American and Latino influences and styles. New details to original pieces or entirely new murals are constantly added to the Balmy Alley collection. So I think they do new paintings every couple months. When a couple years ago, I used to go around there and I would notice the art styles or the paintings would change, and I was always wondering why they do it. It's to keep up like a political image. So a few blocks from Balmy Alley between Mission and Valencia Street, Clarion Alley marks the next stop on a Mission mural exploration. This art-drenched side street is the inspired result of Balmy Alley. After paintings and works of social injustice in Balmy were taken notice of by the community, local businesses started asking around for a street artist to paint their exterior walls. Many of the murals are a result of the Clarion Alley Mural Project. Established in 1992, the project is responsible for 150 murals in Clarion Alley. The project throws an annual block party to premiere fresh editions, play live music, and showcase new films. A similar theme of politics and government issues line Clarion Alley, just as it does Balmy, although each one possesses a distinctive style on its own. Today, the Mission District strives to support and continue to produce engaging and innovative public art in the community. So that concludes my part of the presentation. I'm going to give it to Lysandra.
Hey, Bernice, do you mind switching?
Yes, I'll let him share it.
Okay, can you guys see everything? Okay, thank you. I'm going to start from the top, and let's see where it goes. So my part is current events and the mission today. For the Mission District, I put a graph that shows races in 2017 and or ethnicities, whichever you prefer. On the left side, you see Hispanics is 42, Asian is 11.5, Black or African American is 2.7, and white is 33.8. On the right side, you can see 2020, how the shift has changed completely to its majority white, which is 57.74. African Americans actually stayed up, but it's only like a 0.02% that went up. Asians, that also went up a little bit. And then mixed race is 5.5, and others is 19.57. To the point that I'm getting here is that down here on the bottom right, you can see 15.3% of the people are Hispanic or of origin. So it has changed within the last 2 years alone from 42.1% to 15.3%. Just showing and keep reminding you guys of gentrification and the changes that have been gone through our community now. I have a video ready. Let me know if you guys can hear this. Oh, well, first of all, it's between Between 1990 and 2011, Mission District lost 1,400 Latino households. In the same period, black population of the city was cut in half.
We're going to turn from Valencia Street onto Mission Playground between 19th and 20th. AstroTurf section that was established by City Fields and like Parks and Rec and stuff used to be complete cement, and locals were always playing on it before then. I feel like not until it got nice did the permits start coming.
Yo, you don't understand. It's not about the field. It doesn't matter. This field has never been booked. You don't understand. So this field has never been booked. The last 3 years. How long have you been in the neighborhood, bro? How long have you been in the neighborhood? Over a year.
The argument was basically between like neighborhood kids and tech workers coming in with an idea that they had a right to play and kick us out the field. I think a lot of Americans right now can relate to the issues of space and whose space is it, and the fight over who belongs here. Instead of deciding to play with us, they decided to take this half the field, and the rest of us played over there. So there is still like this segregation of people. People that feel that they are part of the community without showing that they're part of the community. I think if those tech workers and people take their nose out of their phone quite literally and look into the real world, we would have been playing together.
Okay, I'm back. Let's see. There it is. Okay, and then which goes to my next point, which is the Elias Act evictions. This is a state law which says that the landlords have the right to evict tenants in order to go out of business, quote unquote. Tech industry's taking over, they're buying everything, raising the prices on everything, and trying to kick people out with money. The real question is, who are we up against? Is it tech corporations, real estate developers, or our local government? Recent protest against school bus highlighted the question and made national headlines. In addition to evictions, tenant buyouts are another strategy in which landlords attempt to lure current tenants out of their homes with cash to increase rent for wealthier residents. Some blame tech workers, highly paid, primarily young white people who are pouring into longtime working class communities of colors, workers who too often treat our communities like a colorful ethnic backdrop for their corporate lives. As you can see, some of the pictures. The picture in the middle is an empty lot of the corner of 22nd and Mission, where a large residential building burned down in 2015. As you know, the Mission has been a refuge for immigrants and low-income in San Francisco ever since the Spanish founded Mission Dolores in 1976. It's been gentrifying for ages, but never like this. Past few years been sustained tech workers. It's been sustained tech workers colonization. Property prices have skyrocketed, and something strange and terrible has started happening. A spate of mysterious fires. There are 45 of them in 2015 and 2016, displacing 198 people and killing 3, including a child. Legal evictions in San Francisco are costly and difficult, so a lot of locals have started wondering, could there be a plot by landlords, arsonists, to clear out the district and to make way for tech people? If you want to read all these articles, since we're going to be sharing everything, you guys could have the links right below. It's a question that we don't know what's going to happen, or if it's been happening, and because we have no knowledge of it, it just keeps happening and people are getting kicked out of their houses. To change the topic a little bit more, let's do places to visit in the Mission District, to show you the culture of it and like to see what we have done as a community to help. First things first is to go and see the street art. There's no way you go to Mission District and not walk by or see a mural or some sort of street art. And most of these have a lot of meaning and representation behind them, and it's very thought out. Another thing is Mission District is known for its large Latin community. So the best way to spend your time is probably sampling all the different types of food from, let's say, Latin America. Again, there's other businesses that are non-Latin American based, like Thai food and things like that from Asia or different places, but predominantly Latino. So if you ever want to try that, there's over 100 places to eat just within the 10 blocks of Mission. If you're old enough, fun places in SF for nighttime, maybe bars. You go down Valencia toward Mission, hit Doc's Clock, the Homesteady, Knockout, places which host dance parties and some Simpsons trivia. Some places maybe you guys want to visit. And then I don't know if she wants to share this part.
Oh, I can just share from yours. It's fine. You can just like go back. Actually, can you go back to the other one? I wanted to add onto what he said about the murals. Yeah, about that one. And I just want to talk about like the pictures, like the top and the bottom one, and how the bottom one where it says tax the rich, that one is in Clarion Alley. And that place is honestly mostly known, like their artwork focuses more on like conveying political, economic, and like social justice meaning and like issues in their artwork. That's why it's like more like tax the rich. Cause like I guess that area is more like into like the politics and stuff like that. And then the top one, that one's in Balmy Alley. And the murals there and the art there focuses more on like womanhood and beauty and stuff like that, and indigenous like culture and vibes. But yeah, you can go on to the next one. You can go to the next one. Okay. And then this is Mission San Francisco de Aces. This was founded in 1776, and it's the San Francisco's missions, the 16th, founded by the Spanish settlers in their quest to colonize and evangelize the native peoples of California. Today, it is the only intact mission chapel in the chain of the 21 established missions. And it's one of like the most popular missions just because of the area, because it's San Francisco and all that. And honestly, one of the most tragic aspects of the California missions is like how it was used essentially like as slave systems, and it was used to destroy and convert the native people that were already there. It was used to convert them into like their religion. They were essentially natives that were baptized without fully understanding like the consequences of the religious act. And once they were baptized, they were essentially laborers under the church. And if they left the mission, they were hunted down as runaways. So they were basically tricked into being part of the church. You can go to the next one. And then another place you can also visit is the popular Mission Dolores Park. It's one of San Francisco's most popular parks. Some features are like the basketball courts, tennis courts, like the dog area, the playground. A lot of events sometimes happen. Many like festivals, performances, and other cultural events are held there as well.
Right here I have 3 pictures of 3 different places where I went. I went to Mission like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks, all geared up with mask and everything, gloves. Don't worry about it. I was protected. The left side, you see artwork is basically Frida, and it's called Vida. Oh, sorry. It's called La Flor de la Vida, which is the flower of life. This is on 25th Street between Valencia and Bartlett. So the owner is a Venezuelan woman who made relationships with artists from Mexico. She saw the women in Mexico were doing meticulous work and were poorly paid. So she saw, and poorly paid, and she went and made a contract with them. Most of these women are single mothers that are doing this extraordinary work with clothes. So she opened a store in Mission Dolores, and she's been selling the clothes. Her goal is to make the clothes fashionable, not just folkloric. And then the mural's right behind the store. This picture in the middle where the building burnt down, this one is called I Have a Dream. This one is on Mission Street and 22nd on Mission. I'm pretty sure if you've gone down to Mission, you've seen this building. The third one on the right side is Lilac Street between 24th and 25th. This alleyway basically gets new art within every 3 to 4 weeks or so, because constant artists sometimes just come by and then like they clean it up, paint it over, and then they put new art on it. If you want to see more about these murals and look up murals, I left a link as well. So whenever you want to adventure and go out and look for these, you can. Okay, now to more recent and current events. UCSF has begun free COVID-19 testing at SF Mission District. It borders South Van Ness and Harrison Street, Cesar Chavez, and 23rd Street. There's other places that, like Southeast Health Center parking lot, but you have to look around and see what it is. It's mostly for essential workers, police officers, so on and so forth. Other news is SF makes coronavirus testing available for those who leave work regardless of symptoms. So you don't need a doctor's note to go and check in if you have the coronavirus. You can just go there and then just talk to them, and then they'll safely guide you through the process. The other one is Dolores Park could close. If denizens can't follow the rules, Dolores Park will be closed. Mayor London Breed warned today that she warned a few days ago that she would close Dolores Park if Park Dolores failed to practice social distancing. This is the last thing I want, she said, and we want that people keep getting fresh air, and we want them to be out. But if we continue to see that behavior is problematic, Dolores Park will be no longer available. This was published in May 4th, 2020, so very recent. Oh, sorry. What? No, I just... So as you can see, again, I went to Dolores Park, all around Mission, taking pictures safely, and I saw all these people going around with no mask, just walking around casually and not following the rules. And that's another reason why it's not safe right now, because people keep spreading it. I have more pictures, like right here. Everything is empty, nobody's out, businesses are closing, places are shutting down. So it's a very, very good reason to stay indoors. If you guys can, please buy from your local restaurants. Buy food because they also need it, because a lot of businesses are going and being shut down. SF is now... Oh, sorry, give me a second. Low-wage workers who are unable to work from shelter in place or higher risk to contracting the virus. So as I was saying earlier, just please stay safe. If you have to work, there is the coronavirus test that they're giving for free to essential workers. And yeah, please stay home. That's all I got practically.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's very, very good. Excellent. Lots of stuff. So I appreciate that. So thank you again. So we are at the end of time. So I'm not quite sure. I need to make a decision, but Marianne, let's just see. Can people hang out an extra 5 minutes?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, Marianne, may I kindly ask you, and then we're going to ask Anne Grede if you could go next week, but if we can get Marianne's in tonight, that would be great.
All right, I'm going to share the screen now.
And this is only 10 minutes, or
Yes.
So it's not,
Yes.
it's not a long, okay.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mary Ann, and my term paper is on the San Francisco General Strike. My term paper focuses on the events that led up to the General Strike on July 16th, 1934. It wasn't like the longshoremen woke up that day and decided to strike. It was an accumulation of frustration and unfair labor practices that drove them to this decision, along with the support of other union members who supported their cause. After the Depression, jobs were scarce and hard to come by. Many people were looking for jobs to keep roofs over their heads and food on their tables. Those who chose to work on the waterfront soon realized how hard the job was. At this time, though, a job was a job. However, the hiring techniques that the ship owners and dock employers used were inconsistent. There was no rhyme, reason, who was chosen to work. You could work one day, a week, 5 hours a day, 10 hours a day, and the pay fluctuated. The longshoremen were extremely frustrated with these tactics. Sadly, this was a daily process, never knowing if you would get chosen to work or not. Many foremen had no problem accepting bribes to keep you working. The process was each day longshoremen would begin gathering at 6 a.m. and wait for the docks to open at 8. Hundreds would be there and anxiously waiting for a job. As Harry Bridges stated, "We have been hired off the street like a bunch of sheep, standing there from 6 o'clock in the morning in all kinds of weather. At the moment of 8 o'clock, we were herded along the streets by police to allow the commuters to go across the street from the ferry building, more or less like a slave market in the old world countries. Rain or shine was a daily practice regarded as the shape-up process. This distribution of work angered many longshoremen." When President Roosevelt passed the National Industrial Recovery Act, commonly known as the NIRA, it gave employees the right to organize and bargain collectively through representatives of their own choosing. The longshoremen felt confident that changes could be made. At this time, the ship owners and waterfront employers had taken control of the docks. They were now in charge of the hiring since the removing of the unions. Matson Navigation refused to recognize the International Longshoremen Association, which is commonly known as the ILA. When the ILA approached Matson regarding the treatment of the longshoremen, they asked for the longshoremen to be treated better with their hiring practices and all-around treatment. Matson refused. No one was going to tell them how to run their docks. As mentioned earlier, there was a gentleman by the name of Harry Bridges. He was a predominant figure in this strike. Harry was born in Australia and began sailing at the young age of 15. Harry had traveled all over the world. He then came to San Francisco and sailed with the Union of the Pacific, then decided to work on land and became a longshoreman. Harry, along with a few maritime workers, had a weekly newsletter called The Waterfront Worker. The goal of the newsletter was to help keep the longshoremen's focus on their demands, which were simple. They wanted higher pay, shortened work weeks, union recognition, and union running the hiring halls. Harry had experienced a general strike in Australia where he achieved his education about unions. February 1934, the ILA tried to negotiate. They sent a bargaining proposal to the waterfront employers. The owners refused the proposal. A strike was inevitable. However, President Roosevelt asked to postpone the strike, and he appointed a government mediation. In April, the ILA suspended its president, Lee Holman, and created a new leadership structure, a 50-member strike committee led by Harry Bridges. Tired that progress of the negotiations were not being made, longshoremen walked off their jobs on May 9, 1934. The ship owners and the dock employers were making statements to the newspaper reporters. Simply, they were trying to portray the strikers in a negative light. Additionally, they invested in the best riot gear to donate to the police department. They felt that if things escalated and got out of control, that they wanted to have the police department on their side. I found it interesting. The longshoremen would march up and down the Embarcadero daily. However, the city had a law prohibiting picketing. Therefore, the longshoremen referred to their marches simply as parades. The employers brought in strike breakers, which escalated tensions on both sides. The employers and the ship owners felt that they had the upper hand now. The violence was just beginning. The national ILA president, Joe Ryan, flew in from New York to try to settle things. He was very confident that he was going to come up with a resolution. He signed an agreement with the dock employers. Ryan began bragging to the newspapers that the strike was over. However, his proposal had none of the demands the longshoremen were asking for. This proposal was unanimously rejected by the longshoremen. Things took a turn for the worst. On July 3, 1934, with the employers losing millions, they opened the port using strikebreakers, and they said they would move goods themselves. As trucks tried to leave the port, strikers would jump in front of them in an effort to stop them from leaving. Many longshoremen were injured. The following day, July 4th, the docks were closed to observe Independence Day. July 5th, now referred to as Bloody Thursday, frustrated and tension exploded. Police rolled in with their riot gear. They had tear gas, billy clubs, riot guns, and loaded pistols. Chaos was happening, and then shots were fired. 70 people were injured, and 2 men lay dead. Howard Sperry, who was a longshoreman, and Nick Bordeaux, a member of the Cooks Union, who had been sick that day, but got out of bed so he could cook for the strikers. July 9th, 1934, a funeral march for the 2 gentlemen who lost their lives was held. The march extended over 2 miles down Market Street. Thousands of union members marched in solidarity. The community began to sympathize with the strikers. Governor Marion ordered the National Guard to protect the waterfront. The National Guard arrived with tanks, 4,500 soldiers to patrol the streets, and carrying guns. It looked like a war zone. Enough was enough. They announced that July 16, 1934, a general strike would begin. Many people began to panic and rushed to the stores to stock up out of fear that they would run out of food. This kind of reminds me a lot of the situation that we are experiencing today. All union shops and union employees stopped working to support the longshoremen in their strike. This included trolley drivers, construction workers, teamsters, and bartenders. The city of San Francisco was virtually shut down. Nothing was moving in or out of the city. It came to a standstill. 130,000 workers joined the general strike. The general strike continued until July 19, 1934. The waterfront employers were ready to negotiate. But before negotiations could even begin, the general strike must end. Harry Bridges had to convince the workers that they needed to return to work, otherwise they would lose their opportunity to negotiate and their proposals would be denied. Finally, October 1934, the longshoremen were granted nearly everything they wanted. A 6-hour workday, 32-hour work week, coast-wide 95-cent per hour pay. The union would now run the hiring hall, and they would disperse their members out to jobs. The outcome of the strike led to the formation of the International Longshoremen and Warehousemen Union, with significant growth in maritime unionism up and down the Pacific coast. The following year, July 5, 1935, was commemorated by the West Coast maritime workers with an unofficial holiday. Year after year, nothing moved on July 5th. With collective bargaining agreements, July 5th became an official holiday in memory of Howard Sperry and Nick Bordeaux. In honor of Howard Sperry and Nick Beddoes, there is a plaque in place which reads, "In memory of Howard Sperry and Nick Beddoes, who gave their lives on Bloody Thursday, July 5th, 1934, so that all working people might enjoy a greater measure of dignity and security. Sperry and Beddoes were fatally shot by San Francisco police at the intersection of Mission and Stewart Street, when longshoremen and seamen attempted to stop maritime employers from breaking their joint strike. Community outrage at these killings sparked a general strike by all San Francisco unions. The maritime strike continued through the middle of the summer, concluding with a union victory, which brought decent conditions to the shipping industry and set a stage for the rebirth of a strong and democratic labor movement on the West Coast. An injury to one is an injury to all." The end.
Thank you very much, Marianne.
You're welcome.
Nicely done and very informative. And that was just really great. So we are on, thank you so much again. And thank you to all the groups today. You had very different kinds of presentations, but nonetheless showed a lot of work and ingenuity. So that's really great. Let me remind each of the groups that I've asked last week for each group to produce a one-page document that can be emailed to me, which outlines who did the labor or how the labor was divided among the group members and who helped to bring the projects to fruition. That's going to be very important for me to see. Let me just ask you this. Are there any objections at all to having these presentations shared broadly with the class? If there are, if you could speak up. Otherwise, silence will end up indicating to me that there's not a problem with that.
Yeah. So, when am I going to do my presentation on the Donner Party?
That's next week, sir. That's you're next week.
Right. But all right. So, but I'm not going to do it on slides though.
No, in fact, why don't we, Robert, if maybe you can call me or email me and I can clarify for you what your needs are. That way we can let the class go. But I'm certainly happy to talk with you about your requirements.
I wrote the essay already.
Yes, I know. We can talk about this offline. That would be great. I'm happy to email you or call you and we can have a talk.
All right.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. So hearing no objections to the presentations being sent, I think that would be a wonderful gift to the class to be able to do that. And that will help in a number of ways. One would be for the final quiz and also just to be able to review these things because a lot of work went into these presentations. And it would be very, very nice to be able to have them to refer to. And so if you have any objections at all, do let me know. But hearing no objections, I would hope that each of the groups would email me their PowerPoint presentations, which I will then in turn email out to the class. Okay? So thank you all very much. If Marianne and Nestor can hang on, but the rest of you are free to go, and I'll look forward to seeing you all next week. I'm sorry, Grady, that we didn't get to your presentation tonight. And that also reminds me, if I could ask you all, without compromising the integrity of your presentations, if you can keep them to no longer than a half hour, that would be really great. If you can do that somehow. Try to keep them within a half hour. That would be really, really great. Okay. Thank you very much. And we'll see you all then next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Gwen.
All right, thanks.
Well, there are no secrets here. So thank you both for hanging out. I totally appreciate it. I really very much do. And I'm embarrassed to say that somehow the notebook I had has been misplaced, and I don't know where the heck it went. It couldn't have gone very far because clearly I've not been traveling. But I am having issues, and I just wanted to, trust the both of you as good students in the class. And I know that, I guess what I'm trying to ask is what the students will be responsible for. And I want to tell you what I know, and if you could tell me what you know, that would be great. So for example, I know all the chapters. So the chapters that you're all required to do are literally, I'm just making them from the March 18th all the way through the end. So chapter 11, 12, 22, 25, 27, like that until the end. Okay, they're 34, 36. So that's one thing. I'm kind of getting lost in my head about what occurred. And so let me tell you what I remember just to get your sense of this. I think the very first time after the midterm was the lecture that I gave or maybe it was before, but I actually gave was on literary California. Is that correct?
What was the date of that? Do you know? Because I don't have my notebook. If I had my notebook, I could tell you because I'd have to know the date.
Okay. All right. So I'm looking at, I'm trying to construct in my head when all of this took place, but I do know that I gave a talk on literary California, and I know I gave a talk on public health in San Francisco.
Yes, you did. Yes.
Yeah. And so you'll remember the literary one. I believe we talked about William Randolph Hearst. We talked about the Beatniks. We talked about Jack London. We talked about James Shirley.
Yes.
And so I'm not sure if there was anything after that. I think and then there were a couple of the films that I asked you to do analyses on.
But that was when we were in COVID. I don't think it was.
Right. Yeah. And so I think that, and we took the midterm when we were going through the COVID, because that was actually online. I had to put that on.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
So I'm trying to figure out from the midterm what the subsequent, how this all played out in terms of that. Did we give, I think I backed the test up a week, I believe.
And then we had 1 week that we didn't meet because we were working on our group projects.
Right. So I think that accounts for pretty much all of the presentations.
I mean, I can check my notes when I go back home and see if there's anything else there that I think you're missing. But I think you're right on time.
Okay. And Nestor, you were kind enough to do the filming of those. Is there a way at all? And if not, that's totally fine. I definitely don't expect this from you. But is there a way that you could email me those YouTube presentations? Or no? That work? No, you came in very quickly right after we started. So yeah. No, I wouldn't. No, a full video would be great. And then those two presentations, I believe you did